Hello and welcome to Everyday Lessons Every Day. I'm David McBee. Just a few short years ago, my family walked on eggshells around me because, well, I was filled with anxiety and anger. I knew I had to make a change before I lost them. And that's when I turned to self-improvement books to work on myself and to improve my relationships. After several months of reading every day and applying the lessons I learned from those books, I was able to go from grumpy to grateful. It saved my relationships with my family, and the journey inspired me to write my book, Everyday Lessons Every Day. Today, I continue that journey. I still read regularly, and I share those lessons here on the podcast. I also invite everyday people to share their own everyday lessons and how those lessons are changing their lives for the better. This week, I sat down with Eric Davis, a good friend of mine who coined the phrase call center syndrome, which I won't go into just yet because I don't want to spoil Eric's story. But let me ask you this. Have you ever called into a company's call center? For those of you who said yes, and I'm guessing that's most of you, were you happy about it? Were you calling to tell them how good their services were or to compliment their staff? Or were you unhappy? Did you make the call because something was wrong? And did you maybe even have to sit on hold, further aggravating your temper? And worst of all, did you ever take out your frustrations with the company on the person who answered the phone? I'm guessing that most of you answered, yes, I have called a call center, and no, I wasn't happy. I was angry about something, and it was an unpleasant call. Now, trade roles with the call center employee. Imagine you're the person on the other end of the line, taking calls like yours, or worse, for hours upon hours, day after day, month after month, year after. You get the idea. What must it be like to deal with mostly unhappy people all day long? Might it shape your view of the world in a negative way? Let's find out from someone who worked in a call center for 4.5 years. This is episode 53, Call Center Syndrome. Hey, Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay, Dave. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for taking your lunch break to meet me here on Everyday Lessons Every Day.
Yeah, it's worth it. I appreciate the time. Thanks for the invite.
Awesome. Well, I want to get right to it because I know you have some really cool stuff to tell my listeners. So before you do that, will you just introduce yourself? Let people know who you are, kind of what you do for a living.
Sure. My name is Eric Davis, and I'm a corporate trainer. Actually, I'm kind of David's doppelganger. We're interestingly both trainers for large media companies. We both have tattooed right arms. We're both Jeep owners. We both started at our companies within a week of each other 8 years ago, which is odd. And we both evangelize digital love and training around the companies and others that we work for. So we're kind of kindred spirits, just to kind of kick that off. But
Wait, I did not know that we started our jobs the same week 8 years ago.
Oh, yeah. I noticed the LinkedIn update a while back that I hit my 8-year anniversary, and I swear I got mine on a Tuesday. On a Saturday, I saw yours was the same duration. And I was like, you're kidding me. That's another similarity. That's so weird. So,
That's very cool.
very. So
my left arm is tattooed, though.
Oh, okay. So I'm a righty. So mirror images in some respect. But still, it's not that often that you find someone with that many similarities just randomly. And I've always thought that was cool. So
Awesome.
So my job is with Townsquare Media, a big media company, and I am a teacher, a storyteller, an evangelizer of understanding all these complex digital things. That's really what I do as a primary focus, and certainly not where I started. My journey began a long time ago frankly, in culinary school. Like when I started out of college, my focus was hotel resort management, actually. So I went to college, did not finish college. It just wasn't for me. It's not for everybody. I couldn't hack it. I wanted to have too much fun because I was a drummer, and I've played drums for 40 years, and I was spending way too much time playing gigs at parties and not nearly enough time focusing on my studies. And so I was like, all right, I'm done with this. And my mom was a culinary educator and an executive chef. And so I always grew up in kitchens. It was just always part of who I was. And so when college didn't make sense, I said, I'm going to go to culinary school. And then I went to bartending school. And then I started working in hotels and restaurants. And I did that for 5, 6 years working for Hilton and helping some friends open restaurants and stuff, which was great. And the life lesson there was I don't want to be the guy showing up at 5 in the morning, cleaning mats when other people don't show up. And it was starting to like extinguish my love of cooking, which sucked because I've just loved food for so long. So
Yeah.
I was like, all right, career change. I'm going to try something new because variety is the spice of life, right? You should try some different things. And so I jumped to a different industry and I went to the call center industry and started as a frontline phone answerer for Fleet Bank Boston in credit card services, which that was a high anxiety environment, telling people why their credit card APR went from their introductory 8.99 to like 28% overnight, and having those conversations was no fun.
That does not sound like fun.
Not a lot of fun. But interestingly, call centers ended up getting me the first glimpse into the digital world that I work in now because I'm in Colorado Springs, Colorado. T-Mobile opened a call center here in Colorado Springs. And so I signed up just to be, a frontline phone answerer, customer service for T-Mobile. And within 6 months, I was a supervisor. Within 6 months, I was a call center operation manager, and I had 250 direct reports in the call center of 1,000 people. And that was my first foray into management and really my first view into digital technology. And mind you, this is 2001. So this was before the Sidekick. This was before your phones had the internet. It was really a text and phone environment. That was it. It was back in the day, if you remember, if you're old like me, when you had to send a text and you wanted to like use the letter M, you had to hit that number 3 times just to populate an M, right? It was like, oh my God, how quickly can I get through this? And then all of a sudden the internet came to life. And so T-Mobile started offering products like the Sidekick in which you could surf the internet. And to me, that was the genesis. I was like, all right, this is cool. I'm down with this. I like this. And I stayed with T-Mobile for about 5 years, left, decided I want to try sales. I'm going to reinvent myself again, right? I've done food and beverage. I've done call centers. So now I want to try something new. And that new thing was sales. I went into my first sales position. Sold Yellow Pages of all things. And again, digital was central. Yeah.
Another thing we have in common.
I pimped the pages for about 5 years. I was in the top 10% of the sales force for Yellow Book at that time, which is now Haibu. And this was still in the early 2000s. And so the Yellow Page industry was leaning into digital. They were building templated websites. They were starting SEO and SEM, and I was an early adopter. So I started getting that under my belt. I loved it. I sold the heck out of it. So much so that I started a tech company with a business partner, moved to Atlanta, Georgia, started writing apps and games and infrastructures of technologies, working with Beacon Technologies. We had Georgia Tech students writing code for us for course credit and all kinds of fun stuff. And then major life lesson was the operational costs of tech startups often exceed the funding, and so you fall flat. And that's where we were. And that's how ultimately I found myself in my current position. Penniless, couldn't put diapers on a baby. Had to move the whole family in with my father essentially under his second home. He was renovating to find work, and that's when I found my current career at Townsquare. And again, started as a frontline seller. I am now the vice president of digital solutions and training for the corporate enterprise, and my job is to train a bunch of salespeople how to understand all this crazy stuff that helps businesses grow. That was my journey.
And all of this actually leads to your everyday lesson, doesn't it?
It does.
Because, and I'll just tell the listeners, I got a peek at this from your social media, and I thought it would be a really good fit. That's why I reached out to you. So tell us where the everyday lesson came from and what it is and how it applies to everyone.
Sure. So look, most people would agree that if you hop on social media channels right now, or you watch whatever your news affiliate happens to be, that it's doom and gloom times 10, and you could easily get the perception that the whole world is on fire right now and no one's happy. And most people experience that. And it made me remember my experience in the call centers, right? Because that was my fundamental learning, that sometimes you don't have the complete picture of things, and so you make assumptions, and it can affect you in a bunch of areas of your life. And what you saw on Facebook was me articulating that in a different form. I coined a phrase, and maybe someone else has already used it, and if so, I'm stealing their thunder, but call center syndrome. And what that is if you've ever worked in a call center, and I did for years, there were many times that I had these reps that were answering call after call after call. And of course, the people that call into a cell phone company, a mobile phone company, are not happy. They're unhappy because their bill is wrong, the coverage is spotty, my calls are dropping, this phone sucks, like whatever it is. And so frontline AEs, account executives who take those calls, build the impression that no one's happy. All our customers are unhappy. Our product sucks. Woe is me. And they fail to realize, well, the happy people don't call in.
Yeah.
Who listening to this podcast, when was the last time you called your cell company or your cable company simply to say, I love your product, you do a good job, thank you so much, click? It doesn't happen. Like, people don't take time out of their day. Hell, most people who call in with a problem that's resolved to beyond their satisfaction don't even take the time to give kudos to the person that helped them, right?
Yeah.
And so the truth is, these reps had this myopic view of the company through the lens of the handful of calls they were taking, the 5 to 10% of people that call in that are not happy. And they fail to recognize the other 90% of people that are perfectly happy every day with their phone service and don't have a problem. And that kind of syndrome, if you will, is something that I threw on social media to help people realize that, look, when you're getting your content through limited channels, whether it's Facebook or Fox or CNN, whatever your flavor happens to be, you are getting limited input and you're making decisions based upon a thin slice of information, and therefore that's all you're getting. And media outlets, as you know, are based upon ratings, so they're going to put the things that are inflammatory or grab attention, and those are typically the negative, not the positive, and that can affect your worldview, right? And that's one example of making assumptions with incomplete knowledge, and that's a big one that most people can really internalize immediately. But there's more examples too. Like, it's not limited to that. I'll give you a few others. Parenting. Like, how many parents parent their kids through the lens of the experiences they had growing up, right? How many parents look at their children and see them struggling in areas, or maybe looking for guidance, and they draw on their personal experience? Well, that was then, this is now. That was your kid in front of you who's a different person than you were then. And although sharing those experiences is important to give them some structure as to how things could go, if you're not asking questions of your children to really define what was the situation, who said what, like who began with it, who's helpful, who's not, how are you aligning yourself with the right people, right? Then you're making potentially assumptions and course correcting your children's behavior and experience based upon incomplete knowledge. And that doesn't necessarily always shake out.
I've got an example for you.
Yeah.
My wife, like a lot of wives, I imagine, when she comes home, she's tired. It's been a long day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she likes to vent a little bit, right? I wouldn't call my wife a complainer by any means, but occasionally she'll vent a little bit here and there, right? And when she very first started teaching, I basically took that to mean that she didn't like teaching, that she hated her job. I was like, well, then why are we doing this? Just quit, blah, blah, blah. All the stupid things that Mr. Fix-It does. Like, I'll fix the problem, just quit and go do something else, right? And it took me a little while, but she finally articulated to me, hey, yes, I'm complaining a little because there are things at work that are worth complaining about. But overall, I love what I do.
Yeah.
I don't tell you about all the hugs that I got from the kids, or the nice email that I got from the parent saying that their child was happy this year, that they got me as their teacher or whatever. And basically, I got a more complete view of what her world was like. I was basing it all on that call center syndrome, right? Which is that I just want to vent for 10 minutes.
Yep.
And I have learned to say to her, and what good thing happened at school today, right?
Yeah.
So I'm actually, I guess, reaching for, or I'm asking for more than just what she wants to vent, right? And she's happy to tell me those stories. I get to hear them all the time now. And we've gotten to a place where I realize, okay, she's going to vent for a few minutes, and then I'll refocus and ask her some questions about what was good about her day. And she ends up smiling and relaxing the rest of the evening.
Yep, no, that's perfect. And it's funny because when I think about my kids, I think about the kids coming in and complaining about that teacher that they feel is like tyrannical, they're mean, and all that kind of stuff. And as a parent, oftentimes your brain goes back to your personal experience in school, and you automatically latch onto that teacher that was that for you. And then sometimes, unfortunately, what parents do is they support the messaging. Yeah, I had that teacher. Man, that was really hard. Well, do your best or whatever, as opposed to, well, wait a minute, that's a different teacher than the one I experienced 30 years ago. Is it possible that the teacher's great, they expect more of you? Or is it possible that they had interaction with another kid that was kind of negative and you were the next in line? And so unfortunately, they didn't have the ability to kind of meter things from one person to the other, but they're actually a great teacher. Like, um, that incomplete knowledge then sometimes allows us to provide incomplete insights and guidance. And what I liked about what you said about your wife is another manifestation of assumptions that exists in communicating with your loved ones, specifically, typically between wife and husband. And my wife has coined this phrase. I love it. It's mind reading. She'll walk around the house reading my mind, thinking I'm upset about something, and maybe I have a look on my face that articulates something less than happy, but it has nothing to do with her. It couldn't be farther from anything to do with her. But absent communication, absent asking me, "Hey, where's your head at? You doing okay? Like anything I
Yeah.
can do?"
Yeah.
Then we make the mind reading kind of prevalent. And she'll think, and I do this too, everybody does, oh, he's pissed at me, something's wrong. Like, what did I say? What did I do? And then so therefore her behavior will adjust. And it just adjusts to my perceived frustration with her, which doesn't exist. And then what happens? Her body language changes, the meta communication gets a little more closed or cold. And then I react back to that. Well, I'm already frustrated about something work related. And now my wife's acting all weird, right? Or the reverse, she has a look on her face and I interpret incorrectly because I don't ask that, like, oh, I've done or said something wrong. And then I get all quiet because I don't want to deal with that. And then that actually gets her to feel like I am mad. And then it goes from there and things can escalate. So, what's the key? Data input, communication, actually opening up and asking, how are you doing? Where's your head at? Is there anything you need? Anything I can do in this moment to take that kind of frowny face to a happy face? And oftentimes, I think the lion's share, you're going to find out it has nothing to do with me. And
Right.
simply the fact that we have a dialogue about it, which may last 30 seconds, resolves the entire moment. And now we can move forward to whatever happens next.
I feel like I've been there with my wife so many times
Mm-hmm.
that we are actually proactive. Like I could
Yeah.
be in a cranky mood and I will tell her flat out, I'm in task mode right now.
Yeah.
I know I'm not paying attention to you in the way that I should. Here's why, but it's not you.
Yeah.
Right? Like I will help avoid that whole situation by just putting it out there. And she does the same thing for me.
Yep. That's growth, man. Like, my wife and I have been married now for a decade. And I would say it's in the last year and a half that we have really gotten the reins on those skills and done a better job of openly communicating. And so the instances of us maybe getting annoyed with each other are 10% of what they were a year and a half ago, just simply as a byproduct of communication and getting input, getting more information, asking questions, being open. And so,
It goes right back to your lesson though. You can't make a judgment based on the limited amount of data that you have.
no, because you're just not going to be as successful. You're not going to be on point. And the last, I'm not going to dive into this one too deeply, but the last like iteration or um, result that this can have is in sales. Because you and I do something very similar. We train salespeople, and um, any salesperson that isn't really good at getting a complete picture of what a business may need is not going to be prescriptive in their solution. They're going to be topical, or they're going to be selling a package designed for any business, not necessarily the needs of a specific business. And so, therefore, the results are not going to be the desired outcome. You're not likely to retain that customer. And why should you if you're not asking enough questions to get to what the true needs are? It's almost in every aspect of life. Limited input is kind of the death ring to success.
I would go so far as to say that your call center syndrome
Mm-hmm.
has happened to social media. Like I literally remember when I first got on social media, it was basically just friends posting pictures of
Yeah.
stuff that they were doing and stuff that they were eating, and like it was just kind of fun. I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen that person since high school, and there they are. They got a new motorcycle or whatever it is. If anything, it felt like a little braggy, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
but I kind of think that was the point. Like you let it's kind of like showing your vacation videos when you get home. Yes, I'm bragging a little, but I'm kind of showing you what I did because you're interested, right?
Yeah.
Today, when you go through a social media news feed, it can be very dark. It's, opposing opinions about vaccinations and politics and even sports. When Sunday the Chiefs weren't doing very good in the first half, I looked at my scroll and people were just screaming at the Chiefs. I was like, give them a chance, right?
Right.
So I think that a person could say social media is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Social media is neither good nor bad, just like the news isn't good or bad, but the content seems to be leaning that way,
Yeah.
right?
I wonder what Tom from MySpace would say if he saw the current version of Facebook and correlated it to how he began, MySpace back in the day because that's like exactly where Facebook began. Share, 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 picture, picture, picture. Look at me, isn't this great? Yeah, it's true. Like a lot of people talk about how Facebook should not be, or social media shouldn't be your primary source of news. And it's sad to me how many people treat it that way.
Yeah.
It's sad to me how many people will be very verbose and brave with what they say behind the shield of social media, but given the opportunity to look at someone face to face and intelligently and politely articulate a differing opinion, they don't have the ability to do it. And I will say, well, I'm a digital dork. I do appreciate, use, and love social media, but it has absolutely eroded our society's ability to look at each other face to face and have a constructive conversation in which we don't necessarily agree, but we're able to walk away after shaking hands and differing opinions and continue to move forward without any negative residue. That is absolutely, to me, a very systemic problem with social media in general. And it takes us as individuals to look past that. Most people don't.
I think the key is don't read the comments.
Yeah.
Just never read the comments, right? I don't know if you caught this. I think you did, but that video of me pulling into my garage with my Jeep top not completely down and just destroying my garage.
Yep.
That made it onto the Fail Army's videos last week.
Oh, I showed my family. I specifically ran to my wife and I was like, look where David ended up. It was hilarious. But go ahead.
Well, I don't know if you saw any of the comments, but there were a couple in there that just shocked me. One guy was like, the guy in the Jeep deserved what he got. He should be parking that thing on a trail. I was like, what?
Really?
What does that even mean? Do you know how many trails I've been on? I just got back from 3 days in Colorado driving around the mountains. Yes, I park in a garage, but what is that? Oh my gosh.
Okay, so isn't that a perfect example of feedback via limited input? He didn't know who you are. Like if he took the time to look at your Facebook page, he'd see, oh yeah, he's out quite a bit on trails with his vehicle, but you got to park it, dude. It's funny to me. If people took the same time and energy to say something negative and instead use that same time and energy to say something positive, and maybe not necessarily to you, but just in general, where would we be? Where would we be? Like, what kind of societal change would that bring on if people were more willing to just spread some positive as opposed to take the day to beat someone down? It just doesn't make sense. But unfortunately, that's how people think that environment is supposed to be used. They think that's appropriate. It's not appropriate, not in real life or in a digital world. It doesn't matter. People are people to be treated the same way, regardless of when or where. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter.
So what's the takeaway? What do you want my listeners to take away from this to grow and become better humans, make the world a better place?
Take the time to have a full breadth of information before you make a decision, knowing full well that there is more time spent asking questions or researching on the front end. But the truth is, the time that you spend on the front end compiling whatever resource you need to make a good decision will pay dividends on the back end when you make better decisions. And ultimately, when you make better decisions, you just have a better outcome. And technically, there's less work on the back end when you enter things with the right state of mind and the right input. So whatever it happens to be, pick your source, consider the source you're picking, and then take the things that make the most sense and take the time out of your day to research things on your own. Don't rely upon the information of others all the time. You need to actually be your own research department and apply what you've learned. Don't make assumptions. Don't rely on the information of others, and don't thin slice information and make big decisions with small bits of information. That's it.
Nice. And don't make mean comments. Be nice.
Leave David alone, people. He's nice. That's it. Leave him alone.
I'm very sensitive. I'm a delicate flower, All right. Well, I think that was fantastic. And I'm so grateful that you took some time out to share that story with us. Eric, thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for the time. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Everybody, have a fantastic day, fantastic week. And again, I appreciate the time.
All right. I'll see you later.
All right.
Bye-bye. It's so funny. I can't tell you how many times I've discovered an everyday lesson in a self-improvement book or interviewed a guest who provided me with an everyday lesson that I needed at that very moment in my life. And in fact, shortly after recording this interview with Eric, I found myself telling my daughter about call center syndrome. Here's the story. She and her friends had made plans to go to homecoming as a group. Then, kinda out of the blue, a couple of her girlfriends decided they didn't want to go with the group. These are two of Zoe's very best girlfriends in the world, so when they shared this with her, well, she was hurt. She felt like maybe she had done something wrong or that they just didn't want to spend time with her. Since she got the news over text, or Snapchat, or whatever they use, right? I knew she was working with limited information, so I told her about call center syndrome. I told her that there could be a million reasons the girls had made that choice, and it likely had nothing to do with how much they cared about her or how good of friends they were. I asked her not to take it personally and to see if she could get more information before she allowed their request to cause her pain. That night, she was sad and anxious about it, to the point that she even went to bed crying. I thought the lesson had gone over her head or that she'd simply chosen to ignore it. But the next day, she came home from school in a great mood, so I asked her what happened. And she told me that she had talked to her girlfriends, and sure enough, there were some extenuating circumstances that had nothing to do with her or their friendship, and that had inspired the idea that they go to the dance separately. In fact, the girls had also acted on limited information, assuming that Zoe might not want to go with them. So after talking, not texting, more about it, they ended up deciding they did want to go together, and all those hurt feelings dissipated. True story. And so, I challenge you. Write CCS on your wrist this week and try to remember that you are sometimes acting on limited information, and that can be detrimental. Try to get the whole picture before deciding how to feel about it. Let me know what happens when you implement this lesson by reaching out to me at everydaylessonseveryday.com. You can also purchase my book while you're there or learn about hiring me to speak about personal improvement at your upcoming event. If you like the stories brought to you by Everyday Lessons Every Day, please consider writing a review. And also, please share this podcast with your friends. Let's see if together we can make the world a better place. I'll see you next time. Now go out there and do something awesome.